Welcome to the latest F1 FanVoice Q&A. I'm in the Paddock Club at Silverstone with David Coulthard today. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
We had about 3,000 questions submitted, so I'm going to go through probably about 20 to 30 because I know we're conscious of time. So the first question is from Ivo Moorman from Netherlands. He asked, what change would you make to make F1 more interesting and more unpredictable?
Well, I actually have been saying for some time, which gets no support from any of the other teams, that bringing in a tyre war, bringing in a tyre competitor would help the unpredictable nature of Formula One. We have chassis war maybe is a bit of extreme terminology, but we have chassis battles, engine battles, driver battles, team battles in the pit stops, and then we go with a single tyre manufacturer, and which commercially is very good for Formula One, but takes away a lot of that unpredictable nature, where we would see sometimes, if for argument's sake, Bridgestone or Michelin or Goodyear were the other competitor, they'll get it right at one race that Pirelli don't, and vice versa. And I think it just really naturally mixes up the grid.
Good answer. And then the next question is from Dev Dutta from Bangalore. In 1998, obviously Michael was very angry.
Yeah, in Spa.
But how did you guys sort it out post-race?
Well, I understood Michael was angry. He was on his way to almost certain victory until running into the back of me when I was being lapped. So clearly the frustrations were running high because he thought it was some sort of conspiracy between McLaren and to allow Mika Hakkinen to be challenging for the championship, which of course it wasn't. It was just an unfortunate racing incident. And we were brought together in Bernd Ecclestone's motorhome at the next Grand Prix in Italy, and we sat down and agreed to disagree over how the percentage of the blame should be apportioned. I felt that he should take some responsibility because after all he ran into me, but he felt it was entirely my fault, which I accepted. I was definitely at fault, but entirely was probably a bit too extreme.
The next question is from Jacob Milinar from the USA. He's basically said, after experiencing the thrill of competing at such a high level, is there anything about presenting the broadcast that gives you the same thrill?
Well, I enjoy the buzz of responsibility that comes with live television, but of course it doesn't give me the adrenaline or the physical challenge or excitement of being a driver. But because I was lucky enough to have what I consider a full career, was able to retire after 15 seasons feeling like I'd given my best, then I don't have that need or desire to try and replace being a driver with something else.
Great. The next one's from Tyler Connell from the USA. After the 2021 rules are set, which team and driver do you think will be a dark horse for the championship?
For the new regulations?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, new regulations mean opportunity, and historically people like Adrian Newey has been very good at, when you've gone to a big regulation change, of seeking out the opportunity, because everyone starts with a clean piece of paper, and over the course of the next few years then you get diminishing returns. So I would say that Red Bull stand to gain, but that said, you've got to acknowledge the greatness of Mercedes and Ferrari, the consistency that they've been able to deliver in this hybrid era.
Great. So in terms of the next question, so I've got Carlos Rodriguez from Mexico. Based on your own experience as a driver, what do you think F1 lacks now that could potentially improve to make F1 a more competitive sport across the board?
Well, I think a number of things have happened that have just kind of drifted upon us. These are incredible works of engineering art. They are fast and oozing with technology. That said, you don't get anything for nothing. So when I raced in Formula One, the cars were 605 kilos, they're now 735 kilos. 10 kilos is about 0.3 of a second in performance. So all of this additional grip from the bigger tyres, the bigger downforce, the more horsepower, a lot of it is actually just overcoming the mass that you're carrying around on the racetrack, more than 100 kilos of batteries and stuff like that. So I think that it's always important to be honest with your customers. We used to not be so honest with our customers when we win team orders and things like that. That was clarified. You're now allowed team orders. And I always said that's what we should have been saying from the beginning, because we were doing it, but just in a way that was slightly, oh, you have a problem with your temperature, slow down, which meant let your teammate through. Yeah. Now you can say, let Pierre by or let whoever by. So I think that when we talk about these hybrid Formula One, and we're all part of this, save the planet through technology. Yes, there is that, no question. But equally, in going to hybrid road cars in the future, they have limitations. It's not win-win-win, because in life it's just not like that. And I think that we have a responsibility as Formula One to communicate that properly.
Of course, yeah. Next question is from Mohammed Yassin Biat, who asks, what is the best advice someone has given you in your life?
Well, I think I've been very lucky to have great mentors, whether it's my family in the first instance, about work ethic and being as you're supposed to be, being on time and doing all the things that are expected of you. Working with Jackie Stewart, working with Frank Williams, Ron Dennis, Christian Horner, latterly, or Dieter Mateschitz. The university of life that I've been afforded through being a racing driver has just been incredible. But I think that the best advice actually is the simplest of things. If you have a responsibility to call someone back, call them back. If you have a responsibility to be somewhere at a certain time, be there at that time. If you have a responsibility, whatever it happens to be, however big or however small, or someone sends you an email, respond. And a lot of people don't. They don't call you back, they don't respond to an email, they don't turn up on time. And I think, well, what part of that do they honestly think is going to make them at least be on the starting grid, never mind stand out from the others? So my simple advice is just do the little things well, and the complex stuff. I don't know a lot of complex scenarios, but I know someone who can be a problem solver for that. So trust in your team, trust in the people around you.
Yeah, that's great advice, and I think many of us have got unreliable friends who don't reply to emails. Edward Rice from the UK said, considering Red Bull's success in 2009 and beyond, do you ever regret retiring from the team when you did?
No, I don't regret. I had a wonderful career. I think I performed to the best of my ability. I was able to win some races, didn't win the championship, but that doesn't cause me any sleepless nights. And frankly, if I look at my career, I didn't have the consistency of performance to deserve a world championship. For me, a world champion has to be, they're all good. A world champion has to be great, has to be exceptional. And if I look at the history of sport, there's periods where you're watching exceptional tennis players or exceptional footballers or exceptional race drivers fighting for that championship. And there's other years where you get a freak result, or a driver wins a championship through whatever scenario, and I just wouldn't want to be that guy. So I retired at the right time, and I still have a good relationship with Mercedes after all these years, with Red Bull after all these years, because of doing the right thing at the right time. So I think it's better. What I would say is, you can fool other people, but you can't fool yourself. So the moment you have doubt, the moment you think, can I do this, it's probably, the answer is in that question. You shouldn't be doing it, and you should make way for someone else.
Fantastic. Rob Kendall from the UK said, when did you know that you first wanted to be an F1 driver?
I don't know. I really don't know, because I grew up racing cars. My dad watched Formula One, I watched it on the telly, Murray Walker and James Hunt. And I really enjoyed racing. But I don't remember ever going, I want to be a Formula One driver. I just wanted to be the best I could at whatever I was doing. So if that was karting, and then I went to cars, and I won the championship in Formula Ford, and that got me to race for Paul Stewart Racing with Jackie Stewart, and I was winning and doing good results, and that got me the test drive at Williams. And so everything just kind of progressed. So instead of having this, my grandmother used to say to me, when people talk about, it's always been my dream. Well, my granny used to say to me, dreaming is what you do when you sleep, achieving is what you do when you work. So I never really was a dreamer. I was always, well, if I work, maybe I'll get to that point.
Great, that's great advice. I think Jack Dyer from Australia, do you believe the current negotiated 2021 Concorde agreement is a major step in the right direction for closer racing, and what are your likes and dislikes of what's been raised so far? Obviously nothing's been, we probably don't have all the details so far.
No, that's a good, I don't really have the details, and actually the answer to that question is that I've never troubled myself with things that I can't influence. So when I was a driver, I accepted the rules and regulations because I had no influence over them. So if I used energy going, that's a silly rule and that's a silly rule, it was energy that I was not able to use for driving. So right now I'm sitting waiting to see what's delivered. Do I believe they'll be perfect? No, because they never are. Will you please everybody? No, because they never do. Can you please everybody? No, because it's Formula One, it's a reflection of life. But we have as much technology and simulation tools today as we've ever had. The fundamental flaw in our sport is that the fastest car qualifies at the front, and the fastest car therefore tends to stay at the front. So how do you do something that would help the smaller teams but not disadvantaging the big teams who've got the resource, have worked hard? You know, these big teams are successful not because they're on some sort of government funding, but it's because they've got good backers, they've got good management, they've done a good job. And I actually think Formula One for me reflects everyday life. In everyday life, some people are successful, some are not. Some people deserve it, some don't. Not everybody that does deserve it is successful. Motor racing's like that. Those who work hard and deliver get the results. Some that are nice people and do a good job don't get the results because some other part of the team doesn't work.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thies van der Kloot from Netherlands said, do you think F1 teams are really open for signing a woman as a driver in the next 5 years?
I think that, well, I'm involved in W Series, which is the first single-seater ladies championship, and we've really put a big spotlight on the female talent that's out there right now, and I think there's a few of the competitors who are capable of driving in Formula One. Now the question is being capable enough, or are you looking for a Lewis, a Max, a Charles? You're looking for the female equivalent of them, because unless you're as good as a Lewis, a Max, a Charles, you're not going to beat them. So I personally, with W Series, want to bring more women into motorsport. My sister raced, she was very good, didn't get the support because my family was supporting me, and I regret that. So I want to be part of this to help support female talent and bring more women into motorsport. If they're good enough, they'll go to Formula One. If they are merely good, which good is good, then they'll be in touring cars, sports cars, and many other championships where
Formula 2, Formula 3,
yeah, absolutely. So I think the big difficulty and restriction in Formula 2 especially is there's no power steering. Formula 1 has power steering, so you can actually relatively easily turn the steering and the load's more on the neck. Formula 2, there's so much load that I think that the FIA should actually make the cars more small person, let's say, friendly, because it's not just about whether you're a man or a woman, it's about your physicality. If you are physically smaller than someone else, then if it's a big heavy car, you simply can't put the same level of force in.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. Ayrton from the UK said, do you think you'll be closely involved in F1 for the rest of your life?
Well, I really love the sport of motor racing. I've been involved in Formula One now for 25 years or more, actually 30 years when I look at test driving. I enjoy the environment, and yes, I would like to imagine that my business career would always be able to be around Formula One in some capacity. But equally, I'm a great believer in, what's for you won't go by you, so maybe there's an opportunity that presents itself. I'm involved in other business. I have a television production company, I have an events company, I have some other property investments. So there's a lot of different things in my life which are income generating and stimulating. But I do enjoy the world of Formula One. I get to come to the Paddock Club and hang out here with you.
Yeah, it's a brilliant experience being involved. So Ashok Baker basically asked, from your time in F1 as a fan, a driver, and now a pundit and ambassador for the sport, how does the current state of the sport rank among all the years that you were involved?
Well, I think there's always a slightly rose-coloured spectacle moment when you look back through your career. You speak to any of the drivers, they'll talk so fondly of karting. Really passionately about karting. There was a very nice piece with Tom Clarkson, with Charles Leclerc on the Formula One app recently, and he was just talking about the freedom of karting. Now, I think we do that because, one, we were kids, we had no responsibility, and therefore they didn't really seem, it was important, but the consequences didn't seem so high. By the time you get to Formula One, there's so much media attention, which is why the money is there. There's so much global coverage, which is why the money is there and why you become a professional. So it means the work level goes up, and of course, anywhere where you have work, it's not quite as enjoyable. So I think that I'm happy to have raced at the period when I was in Formula One. I don't feel a desire to drive these cars. They are impressive. But I think I don't think, I liked not having fuel on board. I liked that we refueled. The lap, they're 10 seconds slow at the start of a Grand Prix now because of all the fuel. And they're managing tyres and stuff like that. When I hear about lift and coast and things like that, it gives me a shiver, because this is Formula One. Formula One should be a sprint from the beginning to end, not a conservation exercise. And these guys are more than capable of doing the conservation exercise. But I personally don't think the fans care whether Lewis saves half a kilo more fuel than Valtteri.
They don't understand. The casual fans don't understand either. So
I'm, I'd say, more than a casual fan, and I don't care. I want to see wheel-to-wheel battles and pushing and all that sort of thing. And I understand the FIA's view is promoting road safety, promoting efficiencies, and there's definitely a place for that. But on the field of battle, I think that we need just action.
Brilliant. Kim Lindberg from Sweden. Hello, Mr. Coulthard.
Very polite.
It's very polite. Who is a teammate that you have admired most during your active driver years?
Well, I had a long relationship with Mika Hakkinen. We were 7 years as teammates. We're buddies today. It wasn't always like that when we were racing. I was explaining to my 10-year-old son, who's just starting karting, there were times where we would get on the driver parade and we'd be on a back of a Mercedes or whatever, the two of us, and we wouldn't speak for an entire lap. And at first I would make polite conversation, and he would be very short, and then I thought, well, I'm just not going to ask him a question. And then he just sat in silence for like 5-10 minutes. And anyway, we joke about it now. I was like, mate, you were really weird when we were teammates. And he's going, I was focused, I couldn't get close to you. And now we're friends. So, Mika had a good relationship. Mark Webber as well, my last teammate in Red Bull. Kimi was always a little bit either asleep under the bench or driving quickly. But yeah, I respect Kimi as a racer, and he only engages if he feels there's a need.
Yeah. Therese from Italy, she says, what do you think about the 2019 rookies, and could one of them be world champion in the future? Which one?
Well, I think that Formula One has a great young group of racers right now. We've, from a British point of view, we've got Lando Norris and George Russell have come in this year. But if you look just across, with Lando, with Carlos Sainz, a little bit more experienced, but doing a great job as a team pairing. I think we're in a period where we're going to see some transition in the next couple of years. Lewis and Sebastian are not going to keep going forever. Kimi's almost 40, so that will have its time. But you've got, with Max, with Charles, with the other younger guys I mentioned, I think there's a good group there, and then there'll be a fresh group coming in from from Formula 2, excuse me.
Yeah, there's a great generation coming up through the ranks. Ali Musa from Canada, she asks, how did you cope with taking over Ayrton Senna's seat in 1994? It must have been an enormous pressure to have done as well as you did.
Yeah, well, Ayrton's death, along with Roland Ratzenberger that weekend in Imola '94, was, a tragic reminder of motor racing is dangerous. Life is dangerous. We're all going to die. It's a question of hopefully at the end of a long life with a smile on your face rather than through a tragic accident. But Ayrton was well aware of the risks. He was an incredible racing driver, impossible for me to replace him, but he had been very supportive of me within the Williams team, to Frank Williams. And I think his words really inspired Frank to give me the opportunity to go racing after his passing. And I couldn't replace him, but what I could do is honour him by giving 100%. Yeah. And I always gave 100% of my capability. It was never as good as him, of course, but to have given anything less would have been disrespectful.
Brilliant. Duncan Sant from Malta, how did your relationship with Michael Schumacher change after Spa '98? Did you ever completely get over it? I know we touched upon this already, but they're very interested in this stuff.
Michael and I spent social time together during and after that incident in Spa, and we spent some good times after he retired, because we had such a intertwined career with the battles with Mika and things like Spa, that when you go through those highs and lows with somebody, you've shared an experience that you don't have to explain what you do, what your career is, the cars, you all know that. So you can just really talk about the events, the expectations, the enjoyments or the disappointments that are there. So, it's obviously tragic for Michael and his family, the difficulties he's going through right now. but we were in a good place, and I think that's for me is what sport brings people together from around the world. Formula One is a truly global sport. Few others can claim that, and we do it year in, year out. And it brings together race drivers from different nationalities. It brings together fans from around the globe. And I think brand Formula One is a very seductive place to be.
Definitely. The next question is from Katrina from the UK. Out of all of your F1 victories, which one has meant the most to you and why?
I think ultimately my best victory was Magny-Cours French Grand Prix 2000. That's the one I had to overtake Michael and give him a little wave from the cockpit because there was so much passion in my driving on that day. I'm proud to have won the British Grand Prix twice, Monte Carlo of course, because it's such a challenging racetrack. So I won that a couple of times, and then some, winning in Monza, Spa, what I consider the classic Grand Prix. So I'm fulfilled in my journey. There was a few that got away. There was some that I gave to my teammates, but in the end, that was the journey.
Brilliant. Pierre from South Africa wants to know about the plane crash that you were involved in, and wants to know how did this accident change your mindset towards racing and life in general?
Well, the plane crash was the Tuesday before the Spanish Grand Prix in 2000, and I think you don't realise how you evolve sometimes, And I think I was definitely evolving in a slightly spoiled way as an individual because I was being paid very well to drive Grand Prix cars, travelling around the world in a very comfortable way. And I was in London and I was scheduled to fly back that afternoon to the south of France, and I decided I wanted to leave early. We had chartered an aircraft, it wasn't ready for when I wanted it, so I kind of got my office and said, find me another plane, slightly spoiled attitude, and they found this aircraft. I said hello to the pilots, and an hour later we had a crash with the engine failure, and sadly the pilots passed away. And I was lucky that my partner at the time, my trainer, we got away with just some small injuries. But what that did change for me when I got home that night and I lay in bed and I had this sort of shiver of that could have been it, was, did I want to be a Grand Prix driver? Was I happy with the way I was conducting myself? What did I want to do in the future? Did I want to fly? And I absolutely wanted to continue being a racing driver. I wasn't happy the way I was conducting myself. I knew I would have to fly again if I wanted to be a racing driver, and so I flew on the Thursday to the Grand Prix, and I made a number of changes, and I think that I got into a very strong period in my career just by really resetting, really appreciating how lucky I was, getting rid of a little bit this spoiled attitude of getting used to things being done for you. And it's a good reminder in life that they say success is a lousy teacher because it makes people think they can fail. And I think that's a very good reminder that no matter how well you're doing, we all have a peak in life and we all end up no longer here. So anyone who thinks that success is eternal, maybe in the memories of people it can be written, but in a journey of life, I think you've got to appreciate those moments and just be polite. Ultimately, just be polite to people, because pretty much if you are polite to people, you'll always come across as the odd arsehole, but largely speaking, you'll get more out of people if you give a little bit yourself, and I think that was a good sort of reset.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Jared from Canada wants to know what is the most underrated position on an F1 team with respect to their importance? Who's the unsung heroes of a team?
Well, I think that, of course, every element of a team is important. There's no baggage in Formula One. Everyone is there to fulfill a role. And a number of people who are in senior positions today in Formula One started as what we would call gophers. That means go for this, go for that, sweeping the floor, getting the tea and coffee. And I have a production business, and when we're in the production office, I make the tea, because my ability to contribute to the actual editing and things like that is zero. I wouldn't know where to switch on the machine, never mind doing it. So I can make tea, and I think I'm pretty good at it, so I allow people to focus on their creative jobs, and I'll do the bit which is a bit more straightforward. So I think it's important in a team to never think that's not my job, because what a Formula One team does is when all hands are needed on deck, that's exactly what you get. You don't go, well, I've done my 8-hour shift, It's like, guys, we need everybody. Everybody's there going, right, what can I do? And that's why it's such a addictive environment, because this whole thing, whether it's Paddock Club, whether it's the media, whether it's the catering staff, whether it's the Formula One team, the driver, everyone has this can-do attitude. What can I do? When can I do it? How do I play my part? And everyday life is actually somewhat frustrating, because a race starts at 3:10 or whatever time it is around the globe. It starts. The cars are on the grid. Trying to get a delivery to your house is sometime between 8 and 2 or whatever. And it's like, why? Our family business is transport. We deliver 20 pallets to a supermarket within a 15-minute slot, because if we don't, they won't accept it. So everything, not everything, but a lot of stuff in everyday life is just so off the pace.
Makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. We've got time for maybe 2 more questions. So Juan Vargas from Spain wants to know, which driver did you look up to when you were younger?
I was always a big fan of Alain Prost. I liked his efficiency of victories. He didn't always look physically on edge in a Nigel Mansell way or an Ayrton way, but he was very efficient, a high achiever. So I was the test driver for Alain in '93 at Williams, and I was just delighted at that, because I was working with someone that I really admired, and then he became the test driver for Mika and I in '96 at McLaren, which was a bit strange. But so I admired, obviously, getting to work with people like Nigel and Ayrton at Williams was a big thrill. But I've always believed in the sort of sporting etiquette of the sport, and to say anything that could question an Ayrton or a Michael is going to upset some people. But I say with the greatest respect that sometimes they did things that went beyond what I considered to be the boundaries of the sporting ethics. And in some cases they were reprimanded by the stewards, who obviously felt that was the case, and in other cases it kind of redefined what the benchmark of acceptable was. But I think that to be a sports person you have to play by the rules, otherwise you're just a person that's competing in something and trying to win at any cost. And that if it goes beyond the boundaries of the rules, then I find that unacceptable.
Brilliant. And then the very last question is from Thomas from Poland. Who is the best driver who has never been world champion, in your opinion?
I think
Apart from yourself.
Well, yeah, I think some people would probably say Sterling Moss, who finished second a few times and was racing at a time of great danger with Fangio and what have you. So I think that's quite comfortable to go with Sterling.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you
Thank you very much.
Cheers.